Before we actually start the meeting today, I would like to say a few things about Councillor Dean Ruddle, who unfortunately passed away at the weekend and only at the age of 59. And Dean was the lead member for adult social services at the Somerset Council. And he was also known as Mr. Somerton because he was a Somerton councillor, and he was always very active and very much involved with his community. So I'd like to ask us all to stand for a minute and please the people in the public gallery, if they would do the same, to contemplate Dean and remember him. Thank you. Thank you very much for doing that in memory of Dean. Thank you. Okay, we move on now to the General Chair's announcements. And I'll go through those now, so bear with me, please, while I do this. So, this meeting is taking place in the Council Chamber at Shepton Mallet.
Can I interrupt you? Can Mr. Gilbert at home please switch his camera off?
Okay, thank you for that, Debbie. We'll start again. This meeting is taking place in the Council Chamber, Shepton Mallet, and we have members of the Planning Committee, officers, public speakers, and members of the public physically present in the chamber. We also have members of the public watching the meeting on Teams. Cameras within the council chamber allow us to film the meeting for viewers on Teams, and we also record the meeting. Therefore, any members of the public present should be aware that they may be recorded even if they are not participating in the meeting. If this causes you any concern, then please let me know now. No, thank you. Members who have brought their own device with them should ensure that their cameras are switched off, and very importantly, that their device, microphone and speakers are muted for the duration of the meeting. Otherwise, this causes feedback on the council sound system. Public speakers contributing to the meeting virtually should switch their cameras off and put their microphones on mute until they are invited to speak by the chair. It is not permitted for any other member of the public viewing by Teams to contribute to the meeting at any time. Should any member of the Planning Committee wish to speak, please raise your hand and catch the attention of myself, the Vice Chair, Edric, the Legal Advisor, Martin, or Lead Officers, Tessa or Simon. When members in the chamber speak, remember to switch on your desk microphone so that all those in attendance and viewing can hear you. Please do not use the chat function within the Teams, but for anything. All contributions must be made verbally. Please can all mobile phones be set to silent? And can I also add on the end of that, can we all show respect to officers and to each other while we're in this meeting, please? We've had a couple of cases recently where people have said things that haven't been as they should. So I would like just to remind everybody of that. Thank you. Okay, so we move on to the apologies for absence. Helen, do we have apologies?
Yes, we do actually. We've had apologies from councillors Dawn Denton, Alex Wiltshire, Adam Boyden and Claire Sully. And we have Councillor Alistair Hendry opposite myself, who's substituting for Councillor Denton today.
Thank you very much, Helen. That's very good. So next we move on to the minutes from the previous meeting. So I've just got to find those on here a moment. Takes forever. I still can't find it. Is that it?
That's it. Yeah, page 17. Start of page 17.
Oh yeah, yeah. We're there now. Okay, so we're going to go to. It's on page 17. If people need to look, which I did, obviously. Right. So page 17, page 18, page 19. Page 20, page 21, page 22, page 23, page 24, page 25, page 26, page 27, page 28, page 29, page 30, page 31, page 32, page 33, page 34, page 35, sorry, confuse you. Page 36, page 37, page 38, page 39, page
That's it.
40. That's it. Yep. Unless she says page. Oh yeah, it is a 40. That's it. Lovely stuff. Thank you.
Proposer and
Yeah, so we have a proposer, which is Edric, and a seconder, please, which is Martin. Thank you. And right, so next we move on. We move on to any declarations of interest. I think we have one, don't we? Right, thank you, Helen. Would you like to say where is your declaration of interest, please?
I'm predetermined for item 10.
Thank you, Helen. But I believe that you'll still be able to make your comments and then leave the table. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so we've done the declaration of interest, and I think next we will be moving on to public question time. I don't think we've got any of that. No.
No, Chair.
And next we move on to planning application at Sundance 23 Old Wells Road, Shepton Mallet, Somerset. So I'm not sure it doesn't say on there who's leading that one. Oh, okay, carry on. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Chairman. Hope everyone can hear me. Application before you today is at Sundance Residential Property, 23 Old Wells Road in Shepton Mallet. The application is for a change of use of some of the land to the rear of the property to form a fenced off area for a dog training arena. with associated parking to the front of the site near the house. Very slow. There we go. Right.
Sorry, Chair, just to interrupt. We unfortunately had to make a different Wi-Fi connection, so it is going to be going a bit slow today.
Okay.
So you can see the red line of the application site on the left-hand side there. So the property is to the north there, along Old Wells Road, and towards the south end of the site is the proposed fenced-off area where the dog training area will be. That's just a close-up to the dog training area. You'll see the grey area while the slide changes. The grey area to the bottom of the picture there is actually the skate park in near to the Shepton Mallet football ground.
Could you speak a little louder?
Yeah. Right, so this is the site at the back of the property where the dog exercise area and training area will be. So people will come and park at the front, and then they'll walk up with their dogs and meet the trainer towards the back of the property. So say in terms of noise association with the development, barking dogs, etc., you'll see that the environmental protection officer is generally happy, subject to there being no more than the site not being used more than 5 days in any 7-day week, and restricted hours, and also the number of dogs being trained limited to 3 on the site at any one time. So the slide in front of you now is the house, and shows a parking, three parking spaces that will be required for the 3 people attending the dog training, and 3 parking spaces retained for the house. And there'll be on-site turning, and cars will be able to leave in forward gear from the site as they do now. Since I wrote my report, the applicant has submitted some additional drawings confirming that turning can be achieved on the site, which means that we can omit the condition 4 in my planning report. So this is the access. Oh, sorry, get ahead of myself. While it changes as well, I've also made a slight change to condition 3 with regard to the restricted hours on the site. The restriction would not apply in terms of the hours to the owners' dogs themselves. So it restricts only to the people being trained. So that's the access point, looking in both directions. Another access, a picture of the access point, and that's an aerial photograph that we can see See my cursor. So slow. Essentially where my cursor is there, that's where the dog exercise area is going to be. You'll see the grey bit to the right there, that's the skate park. And then there's the football field there. That really concludes. So we're recommending approval with conditions restricting the number of attendees on the site and the hours and also the number of days in the week. And that's it. Thank you, Chairman.
And thank you, Carlton. Next, we move on to the public speakers, which I believe is Pat Jackson. Yeah, and I believe you're the applicant. So you have 3 minutes, okay?
Yeah, I think. Oh. Actually, I will sit down. Hello, I wish to speak briefly this afternoon to give a little more insight about our application for change of use on part of our land to include dog training. Myself and my husband have been involved in dog agility and competing with our own dogs for around 8 years now. Our experience and knowledge has reached a point where we'd like to offer training for either new or experienced dog owners. We found the activity of dog agility to be beneficial both in terms of physical and mental health. Taught correctly, it's also beneficial to dogs' behaviour as the process involves obedience and self-control, as well as being fun and enjoyable for the dog and handler partnership. Whilst there is some demand for agility training, we are aware that it is not so large that we envisage the training area to be in constant use throughout the hours stated in our proposal. As the business is new, it is only ever likely to comprise of something that is offered part-time alongside our normal day jobs. It's likely to take quite a while to build the business up, so it would grow slowly over the next few years. We have discussed the proposal with our neighbours and we are aware that an objection has been submitted. In developing the proposal, we have been very mindful of the potential impact on them and are therefore happy to restrict the use of the training area in line with the Environmental Health Officer's comments to ensure there would be minimal to no impact on them. As this is an outdoor venture, it's subject to adverse weather conditions, for example, rain, wind, extreme heat, cold and snow. And these conditions don't actually have to be that bad in order to result in the cancellation of a session. Doing some research, it rains in the UK for over 42% of the days in the year. This added to the other conditions considerably restricts the use of days we're actually able to train. The reason that the operating hours and times have been kept relatively wide is to simply allow for flexibility as training would take place around those weather conditions, available daylight hours, our current jobs, and of course client availability, all factors which do limit the use of the training area. In addition, only 3 dogs will be using the area at any one time and they will be fully supervised at all times. This number has been kept very low to ensure any impact on the neighbours is minimal. It will also be a condition of booking a training session that any barking will be kept to an absolute minimum. The training area will not be let out independently. Either myself or my husband Gary will be in attendance at all times to ensure that rules and conditions are followed. Most training sessions will comprise of 1 hour slots, but we do wish to clarify that 30-minute training slots would be subject to a maximum of 1 vehicle and 1+ hour slots would be 1 to 3 vehicles. A minimum of 15 minutes would also be allocated between each lesson to allow for clients to leave and arrive without crossover, therefore nullifying the possibility of more than 3 client vehicles in our driveway at any one time. We are providing adequate parking for the proposal, but one benefit of our location is that local clients could have the option of walking to a lesson, therefore no vehicle would be required at all. We would inform every client arriving to enter and exit the driveway with consideration for safety to any people or dogs, and we would be asking our clients to be respectful of our neighbours. We do hope this helps to clarify our planning proposal a little further, and we are hoping we can bring a little bit of dog agility and the benefits it has to offer to the
If you could wind up, please, that would be good.
Yeah, thank you for your time. That was great.
Thank you.
Just hope. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. You can retake your seat. Okay, so we have no one else to speak in the public arena, but I will go to the Shepton Mallet councillors first, which are Benty. No, a Somerset councillor who represents Shepton.
Yeah, that's correct. Thank you very much. I have got very little to say about this application. I think it's a good idea. However, if I lived next door, I would probably not like to have them there exercising on a Saturday evening or 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock. That is me personally, and I think it's a good idea. People can take their dog, walk up there, but who is responsible for picking up any fouling? That's the only two things I can think of. So basically, I will support the application because I think it's a good idea, but I would like that we could get hold of somebody if it doesn't go according to plan. Thank you.
And thank you, Benty. Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I will support the application. In line with the comments made by Shepton Mallet Town Council, I was wondering if we could consider a condition that the this planning permission lapses with the current householders leaving, so that once they leave, the land reverts to its previous use. I don't believe that's in the conditions, and I wonder if that could be considered, please. Thank you.
Who would like to answer that one, Martin? Or yeah.
There we go. Just to answer the question, no, you're giving permission for the land use rather than giving permission to these particular applicants. So you need to look at the use that the land is going to be put to, and consider whether that's acceptable or needs to be conditioned in any way. But it would be for a permanent change of use until another use came forward at some point in the future. But anyone could operate it. Yeah, not just these applicants. Do you want to?
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, you'd like to come in, Carlton?
Yeah, just something that might help with that. If you see in the opposition report, there's an advice note number 4, which has been brought forward by the Council's Environmental Protection. Obviously, the use of the site wouldn't preclude other action under separate legislation being taken if it was found that there was a nuisance, an ongoing nuisance. So hopefully that would be some peace of mind for people who are concerned about the hours, etc.
Thank you, Carlton. Are you happy, Martin? Right, and Edric, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. I'm broadly happy with this, but I'd like an amendment that operations cease at 6 p.m, not 8 p.m, because like Councillor Height, I do have some reservations around dogs disrupting my evening when I finish working in the summer. So I'm broadly happy with it, but I would like an amendment to 6 p.m, not 8 p.m for operations. Thank you.
Happy to second that.
And you're seconding that, Benty? No. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Martin, you'd like to come in?
Yes, and perhaps the department or the planning officers would follow. In terms of changing the recommended conditions, one of the tests for imposing conditions is whether it's necessary to control it that way. And as I understand it, there were no objections from environmental health in terms of that timing, which was to 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock. So if you're going to amend the condition, there needs to be good reason for doing that, because your technical advisor is saying that they don't have an issue with going that late.
Can I come back?
You can come back.
Thank you, guidance, Martin. I just think that 8 p.m. maybe in the summer when you're trying to have, relaxing after work, the risk of having several barking dogs, possibly. I appreciate people try to control this. At the back of your house in the evening, in summer evenings, may be too much, and that's why I was suggesting curtailing operations near the end of a normal working day at 6 p.m. rather than 8 would be my suggestion.
Okay, who would like to come back in on that? Where was you, Benty?
Thank you. I just want to say that, 8 o'clock is late on a Saturday evening, but can we please just give it a go and see what happens? And the minute we have got a complaint, that we then go in and reset it. So but I don't know, is that possible? Because if it is possible that we can come back, then I think that we should give it a go as it is. But I will most certainly, the first complaint, then it has got to be addressed immediately.
Can I come back on that? Can I suggest perhaps if members are thinking about refusing it because of the late hours, that you consider doing a temporary permission for the hours? So you'll say for the first year, it's till 8 o'clock, and then it reverts to 6 o'clock after that year. And if there's been deemed to be no problems, the applicant can then apply to vary that condition to make it permanently to 8 o'clock. So you effectively test it for a year. If there's no problems, they can then come and apply and then get their permanent permission. And if there is a problem, then it reverts back to 6 o'clock.
Okay, I'm just going to check. Edric, does that fit with you okay? And Benty, obviously.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Tessa. Yeah, I think I'd be churlish not to go with that recommendation. I think that's a perfectly reasonable suggestion to see how it goes for a year. So thank you, Councillor Height, for that suggestion. I think it's a good one, and I would be happy to go with that, subject to it being okay during the year, then no amendment would be necessary. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, and Councillor Kay, you're also happy with that because you seconded that originally.
Yeah, that's fine, thank you.
Alistair, I believe you wish to say something.
It's okay. There's a few things I was going to say that's already been dealt with, so I'd only be repeating it. So leave it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So can I have a proposer and a seconder, please?
No, you've got one.
I've got one.
Yeah, Chair. I think the proposal was from your Vice Chair, seconded by Councillor Kay. Well, I think you've now accepted what the officer is now recommending, because that wasn't the original officer recommendation. But I understood that you both indicated that you were happy with that proposal.
Yeah,
I can see Councillor Kay wishes to say something.
It's all right. I just thought that was just for the amendment. I was seconding an amendment, but I'm happy to propose or second.
If I may speak, I don't think Councillor Hobbs actually said he was proposing approval.
Okay, so can we have the proposer?
On the basis of recommendation from the lead officer, I am happy to propose we accept it in line with officer recommendation, subject to re-evaluating it after a year. If there's a problem, then we can go to 6 p.m. Thank you, Councillor Hyde.
And you're going to second, Benty, and not Helen. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour?
Unanimous.
Unanimous, that's brilliant. Thank you. Back on again. Now we have to move on to the application for Greenhill, Barton Road, Butley. So a change of use of agricultural land to a holiday let and erection of a holiday let. This one is for Kelly. So Kelly, your turn.
Mr. Gilbert, that's right, he's gone.
I'm here. Hi.
Hello, Mr. Gilbert. You'll be asked to speak in a minute. We're just going to have the presentation from the planner, okay? So if you could keep your camera off for a moment, thanks.
Yeah, just to come back in there, Mr. Gilbert, I will let you know when you can speak. Okay, thank you. Okay, Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. I'm hoping it's not going to be too slow, but we'll give it a go. Is that me? Okay. You're correct, Chairman. You start my job for me. You say what the application's for. I like that. This is Greenhill, Barton Road, Butley, and it is the change of use of some land that's currently used in agricultural use.
Put your mic off.
I think so. Yeah.
I'm in your teams.
Yeah.
Open your teams meeting.
For those online, we're having a few technical difficulties.
I did this before. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Okay, so this is the change of use of some agricultural land to holiday let. It's part retrospective. Shall I turn that off? Okay, shall I get away from it? That's annoying me. Anyway, let's carry on.
Do you want to try it again?
Yeah, thanks. Now the presentation's not moving on either. I don't know. Oh. Share.
In the slideshow. You should push escape in mode.
For people online, we are having a few more technical difficulties. Hopefully it will be sorted soon and Kelly can continue.
And they're off. I'll start again. So on that plan there, you can see the plot of land. It has access from Barton Road in Butley, that's existing, and it leads down to a group of houses. There is an existing small stable block there already, and the proposal is to remove that and erect a 3-bed holiday let, which includes a therapy room and yoga room. And the retrospective part is for the yurts that are already on site. There'll be 2 yurts for holiday let use and 1 for a kitchen and 1 for a shower room in association with that use. That's a closer look at the site. The L-shaped building is the replacement building and the yurts are obvious. This slide shows the red line, which is the settlement boundary. And I don't know whether you can see that little bullseye blue circle thing in the middle of the screen there. That's roughly where the site is. The site is in the phosphate catchment area. It's a priority habitat and it's outside the development limits, where development is usually strictly controlled. That's the elevations of the existing stable that will be removed. And it will be replaced with this building that will be used for holiday let purposes. That's the elevations of the proposed building. That's an example of the yurts. That's what the yurts look like on the site at the moment. Picture on the left is the access to the site is off the picture on the right hand side, but that's looking down towards the stable in the yurts, and that's the existing stable building there on the right hand side. And this is the entrance to the site from the highway known as Barton Road. So as I said, Chairman, this application is for holiday lets on the site. It's outside the settlement limit where development's strictly controlled. It's in a remote location where the people travelling to the site will be dependent on a private vehicle. There's no street lights or public footpaths or pavements to get to any facilities that might be available in Butley. It's considered that the new building erodes the character of the countryside, given that it will be replacing a standard stable building that you'd expect to see in the countryside. And the application is recommended for 3 reasons for refusal. If you look at your report, Chairman, 1 is outside the development limits, unsustainable location. 2 is the impact on the character of the countryside. And 3 is that because this will be an intensification of that existing use over and above what it's currently used for, there's insufficient detail to support that there will be adequate visibility provided to serve the development. So it's recommended for refusal.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Now, Mr. Gilbert, I believe you're in India, is it? And so if you'd like to come back in now, that would be very good. And you have 3 minutes.
Right. Thank you. Okay, so shall I start then? My partner Mira and I have lived here since May 2015. Our house and adjacent 2-acre field with 2 yurts utilises the latest renewable and sustainable energy technologies. I also co-purchased a nearby 8-acre field in 2015, and we have been rewilding it as a community project, planting hundreds of native trees. We are setting this up as a trust so the community and visitors will benefit from this for perpetuity. This field is a 5-minute walk away along a designated public footpath that runs across my land. The site is old stables used for storage. It has a concrete foundation of 160 square metres, not 269 square metres that the case officer has stated. So our intention is far more modest and on an acceptable low impact scale. It is a half a mile away from the Barton Inn and the organic farm shop hub Plotgate in Barton, as well as equidistant to the bustling Sourdown Farm shop in Butley. The walking distance to the local post office in Butley is under 1 mile. Precedent has been set very recently by the council to approve new holiday lets in similar locations. There are a number of approved nearby holiday lets, so why is ours different? These include Yurt Glamping Banbury Meadows opposite us and nearby Orchard Farm Camping. What is different and beneficial about our proposal is that it can be open all year round. Our present seasonal yurt business employs 2 local people, but with this holiday let, we will employ 4, of which at least 1 will be full-time. Our neighbour Avalon Permaculture Gardens runs workshops all year round, and it will utilise this resource if permission is granted. All our village councillors and neighbours support our proposal. Mia and I are experienced Airbnb superhosts, and our yurts here already have 76 5-star reviews. This is the result of 8 dedicated years of Mia rewilding and managing our yurt field. It's her passion and her life work. Guests use the local resources, bringing money into the local economy. Many are doing courses and workshops around Glastonbury, but prefer to stay somewhere rural and in nature. We are very closely connected and a part of this Glastonbury economy. Holiday lets in rural locations are considered a positive addition to the local economy under planning policy CP3, as they bring visitors into the area. And in our case, it would be all year round. We have unimpeded vehicle access to the site. Large vehicles such as refuse and recycling lorries and large delivery vans easily access our car park passing the proposed site. We vigorously maintain our roadside hedges and track, as we also share this access with our immediate neighbours and have a legal obligation. The Highway Authority has not objected to our proposal. We have used a very established and prominent local eco-architect firm to design a building that reflects the local character of rural and agricultural low-level structures by having a shallow pitch roof and timber-clad elevations to minimise the mass and impact on the local area. That's my 3 minutes. Maybe I came in under.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gilbert. I see that neither of the local Somerset councillors are here today with us, unfortunately. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Mr.
please?
Gilbert, you can turn your camera off now if you don't mind.
Mhm.
Thanks very much.
Okay, I think Susie, you were up for, you were up first.
Hurrah, third time lucky. Okay, so in the absence of Claire and the other Somerset councillor for the area, I'll just, being close by, maybe take the opportunity to say I know the village extremely well. I've lived in the area for over 20 years and I see no reason whatsoever why we should be objecting to something like this. He seems like he's ticked plenty of boxes. And I can certainly say that I think the little close by to him, the little new farm shop set up there, as well as the long standing successful post office. Sadly, the pub has closed down, as have many local pubs due to, you know, the exorbitant rates, mainly of electrical charges at the moment, but anyway, that's closed down. So I think actually encouraging things in the village, encouraging people into the village to spend money and put money into the local economy is great. Right next door to this place, they've been setting up pop-up bars, I think on a monthly basis, which is opposite the old pub. They're trying to revitalise their village and keep their little local economy going. And I think that this will only add to it. So I would say that we should be supporting enterprises such as this. Thank you.
Thank you, Susie. Helen, I'm going to come in after Helen, okay?
Susie's made some of the same points as me. I was going to say that the officer report doesn't include things that the gentleman speaking mentioned, which was the fact that it's an eco build, it's off grid, it's going to be built on the existing concrete foundation. And to me, that makes it sustainable. When we talk about sustainability, it seems as if we're using that word mainly talking about whether we're talking about private transport and using the lanes. I think any rural business is going to be using the lanes and is going to rely to a certain extent on the car, but they are offsetting that by creating this property that's going to be off grid and a very high eco standard. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that it says that it's in the open countryside. I'm sure it's classified as open countryside, but it looks to me, looking at satellite images, that it's actually surrounded by trees and it will be hidden by trees. And then thirdly, I think it's all part of the experience, having people, there is a comment from Highways, from somebody that says that the lane is not lit. Well, that's all part of the experience. If you're going to go for a glamping or holiday or somewhere in the countryside, you actually want to be in the dark. You want to be able to see the dark skies. So I think that's part of it. In fact, that's one thing that's a downside, which is that they are going to put roof lights in. So that is one thing that I am slightly concerned about, that they're going to have windows which might affect the dark skies. And there was something else, and I think I've forgotten what it was. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Helen. I'll take this opportunity to come in. I'm in full agreement with Susie and full agreement with Helen. I've known the site for many years. The gentleman probably doesn't recognise me, but I do know the area. I do know the site, and I think, and in my personal opinion, I agree with Susie. I think, and Helen, I think it's an ideal site for this. I'm sorry to disagree with you, Kelly. Thank you. Okay, Alistair, you wish to say something?
Okay, well, I don't actually know the site because I don't live here. However, having said that, could you bring up the slide, please, where it showed the fields with a little blue dot in the middle?
That blue dot is on the picture.
Oh, is that right? Okay, okay. I did used to live in Wales, but that was a time ago.
Can we ask exactly where it is going to be? Because I think the blue dot's in the wrong place.
Right, okay. Is the blue dot correct? That's the first thing. Is it? It's not correct, no?
It should be further south.
Okay, all right. I heard what the applicant had to say. However, he was speaking very quiet and very quickly, so I didn't actually get all of it. But to the best I could, we'll pull something out of it. In the position there is it doesn't cause anybody any problem whatsoever of any way. And what a couple of the councillors have said already, because it's a glamping experience and we're not looking at a hotel or a bed and breakfast house. It is what it is. And I'm not quite sure why it's been recommended to be turned down. I just don't understand that in one way at all. As it stands, without going into too much detail, because it's all been spoke about anyway, I actually don't see any physical problem with this. I think the man should have his permission. I've seen the presentation, heard what everybody else had to say, which has been very helpful, and I propose we grant permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Alistair. I can see two more hands are up quickly. Helen and Susie.
Well, I was just going to second as Alistair proposed.
Okay, I think Helen's hand up was first, so she may want to take your thunder, Susie. I don't know.
Yes, I've just remembered the other thing that was the officer or the highways person said about, which was about the visibility display, and I was and a hedgerow that might need to come down, and I don't think that it does need to come down because it's not going to be enough traffic going up and down the lane. So I just wanted to make that point as well. That was the thing I forgot to say before, and I'd like to second Alistair's proposal. Sorry, Susie.
Okay, thank you, Helen. I'm quite aware, and Martin wishes to come in now.
Yeah, just a couple of procedural points if members are minded to approve the application. Firstly, you'd need to delegate conditions to officers in consultation with the chair and vice chair. But also there's the need, if you're going to approve it, for a section 106 agreement for off-site phosphate mitigation to make sure that the Ramsar is not affected by the development. And the third item, I just need to check with Mr. Trafford whether this would be a departure if it went. It would not. Right. That's fine. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Helen, you wish to come back?
Yes, thank you. Although the proposer said that it's going to be an eco build, I wonder if all that stuff that's in the business plan or covering letter, I looked quickly at the design and access statement in the covering letter. I wonder if that could become a condition. Is that okay to put that in as a condition to make for a resource sustainability statement or whatever it's called, to make sure that they do actually make it off grid and what they're saying they're going to do. And there was something else which I've forgotten again.
Okay, I think Kelly better come back on that one. Sorry, Kelly.
Yeah, no, that's fine, Chairman. We could do that.
Right, that's fine. So that's okay. Edric?
I'll just pick up on one thing Helen raised but hasn't come back on, roof lights and dark skies. So I'm surprised Helen didn't come back on that. Just to remind you, do you want to say something else about that?
I think because we have to look at the proposal that's in front of us, I don't think we can tell them to take out the roof lights. I think that's, so I don't know if we can encourage them to put blinds over so that they don't have the light spilling up. I don't know how we'd do that.
Chairman, I mean, you could put a condition on. The trouble is with blinds, it's very difficult to enforce. So we've really got to go with the plans that we've got. You can't really ask them to amend the scheme now as part of this application.
Thank you for clarifying that, Kelly. That's great. Yes, Susie, you'd like to come back again?
Well, I don't know why that is difficult, because when you buy those windows, the option, like when you literally go to try and buy them from Velux, which is the people that mainly sell them, you either buy them with the blind or without the blind. So it's a pretty easy thing, I would have thought, to ask people to do, to buy it with the blind. Obviously, you can't force them to shut it, but, you know, at least it would. Most people actually want to sleep at night, so they will close it so that it doesn't wake them up in the morning, which will achieve the same end of not lighting up the sky in the dark. Just thought I'd put it out there.
Okay, Helen.
There is one more condition. I don't know if we can do this, but it's for a holiday let. And what someone has suggested to me is that, you know, a few years down the line, would they ask for this to be converted into a permanent dwelling? Is there any way we can put a condition on to stop that?
Yes, Chairman, we would put a condition on to say it was only used as a holiday let, but that won't stop any future applications coming forward to remove that condition at a later date.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. I see Martin's happy as well. Yeah. So, okay, Barry, you'd like to say something?
Thank you, Chairman, for the third time. I think I should be no mates in this one because I agree with Kelly. The reason for refusal is that development lies in the countryside outside defined limits. When does development stop creeping across the countryside? Because, oh, well, this is an exception for this, is an exception for that. There are development limits where people shouldn't be building outside. And it doesn't appear to me that the planning officer thinks the economic benefits outweigh the disadvantages. So I'm afraid I'm with the planning officer on this one. Thank you, Chairman.
Fine.
Absolutely fine, Barry. You can do what you wish. Simon, you'd like to come in?
Thank you, Chair. And just to say, members, although we put forward the application for refusal, you'll see there's no reference to the existing yurts. So the refusal references the house that's proposed, and although we can control it so that it's occupied as holiday accommodation only, it nevertheless will be a house in the open countryside beyond settlement limits. But having said that, we're not objecting to the yurts and the provision of the yurts to provide accommodation. But what we can't do is issue a split decision. But hopefully it's self-evident from the report that there's no problem with the yurts as a concept of providing holiday accommodation.
Thanks, Simon. I don't believe, oh, Martin, you'd like to. Oh, Edric, yeah, he was pointing to you.
Thanks, Martin. I'd just like to say, I actually agree with Barry. I have no problem with the yurts, as the lead officer has said, and I think it's good for the clarification to differentiate between what's there already and what's being suggested. And I'm actually in agreement with, certainly that's been clarified there. The yurts are fine, but adding permanent built holiday accommodations. So yeah, I agree with Barry on this one.
Okay, thank you, Edric. If nobody else wishes to speak, we'll go to a vote. I don't think we need to delay. I think, Susie, were you the proposer? Who was the proposer? Alistair proposed. Who was the seconder? And Helen? Yeah. Okay, so would you like to sort of read out what your proposal is?
Well, it's actually got a bit more complicated as this conversation's gone on. Because since I first said, which I actually stand by the way, to actually propose that they get permission, as the conversation's gone on over that, it has got a bit more complicated. It all goes hand in hand, whether you have yurts or a house or call it what you will, it all goes hand in hand, and you have to deal with what's here on the table here today, not tomorrow. So if we said, okay, you can have that, but you can't make this a big residential house or extend on it and do anything else in time to come, that's us maybe, but you can't vote on that. So it's what's here on this table today. That's what we're looking at. So as it stands, I stand by the fact I don't actually see a big problem with this. And everything that's on the site goes hand in hand simply because it's not impeding on anybody else. The footprint is not that bad, and highways, which is always a big one, they're on board with this. They haven't brought up any problem of any kind. So yeah, I stand by that, and I still say we grant permission as is. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alistair. Okay, we'll go to the vote. Martin, which is come in first.
Sorry, quickly, and can we just confirm that that's subject to a Section 106 agreement to secure the phosphate mitigation and conditions delegated to officers in consultation with Chair and Vice Chair? Thank you.
Lovely stuff. Thank you. Okay, let's go to the vote. All those in favour?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
1, 2, 6, Chair.
Right. All those against?
3, Chair. 4.
4.
Beg your pardon. 4.
Okay, thank you. So that is carried. Thank you. You have your permission, Mr. Gilbert. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and we now move on to, where are we to? Oh yeah, here we are. Billingsley, Bath Road, Oak Hill. Well, we know where Oak Hill is. Erection of a detached holiday let. And this one is Carlton.
Right. Thank you, Chairman. Very similar to Kelly's application, except no yurts or anything involved here. So we've got an undeveloped parcel of land, originally probably belonged to very slow. Yeah, it's working now. Right. So it's the erection of a holiday let in a remote countryside location, similar to Kelly's. The land once belonged to a public house that over recent years has been converted to 2 dwellings. And the applicant seeks to erect within some of the remaining land close to a little stream in a sort of wooded type area, more like sort of overgrown brush, etc. A holiday let. Okay, so I'll just. So that's essentially to the south there is the stream. The property is going to be located on, if I show you this diagram, on stilts. So it's not affected by flooding. So we get around the flooding issues. We get around all ecology issues. Obviously, there will be some loss to the vegetation, etc. there, but there is sufficient mitigation within the application. Access to the site is acceptable. Let me go back. So there will be sufficient room for off-street parking and turning to allow safe access onto the highway. As I say, all ecology issues are acceptable. As to flooding issues, but like Kelly's application, again, this is very remote from any services and facilities. The policy says, national policy as well, that the development of the countryside should be strictly controlled, and the countryside needs to be protected for its own sake. So we are recommending the application for refusal purely on the basis of being an unsustainable location with no access to services and facilities and being wholly reliant on the use of the private car. So there's a couple of photographs which show the site, and you see the thick trees, etc. The photo on the right is actually taken from the road looking down towards the stream. Difficult to see because there's so much vegetation. There's an aerial photograph of the site. So towards the bottom of the picture, where that overgrown area is, that's essentially where the house will be located. Okay, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
And thank you very much. Next, we move on to the public speakers, which on the objection side, we have, I believe it's, is it Mrs. Shaw, Jennifer Shaw, please, first.
Thank you. I'd like to object to the planning application, which is actually in Nettlebridge, not in Oak Hill, as it states in the address. There are many reasons why this is not a suitable site for any kind of development. I'd like to make an observation about the appearance of the proposed building and its relationship with the surrounding area. Nettlebridge is a small hamlet that sits right on the edge of a nature reserve, and it's steeped in history. So much so that a whole book has been written about the history of Nettlebridge. The houses that surround the land were mostly built in the early 1700s, with some arriving later in the 1800s, and then a few later in the early 1900s. They are all made from original local stone. These houses have a rich history, including an old pub, a coach house, brewery buildings, an old sweet shop, an old chapel, and small cottages. The ancient Old Foss Way runs right through the centre of this quiet hamlet. A distinctive and beautiful house, Gales Court, was later built in the 1970s. However, the landowner had to fight for 20 years in order to gain permission to build it. because the planners at that time said that nothing else should be built in Nettlebridge due to its natural beauty. I would strongly argue that a modern wooden box-shaped house on stilts does not fit in with the old stone cottages and with the beautiful historic countryside of Nettlebridge. The land is not a potential building plot in my mind. It's not easily accessible for anyone. The inhabitants would not be able to walk anywhere from the house except in the main road, which is not itself safe to walk down. There is no bus stop in Nettlebridge. The car parking place also leads out onto the very busy main road on a bend. The land is not flat or sound for building on. And it is right next to a river that is becoming more unstable every year through increased rainfall. And we had huge problems with the river overflowing the banks just last Thursday. If you have to resort to building a house on stilts, then it really shows that the land is not suitable for building on. In my opinion, this small, quiet piece of land should be left to nature and the wildlife that lives there at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Caroline Pembroke, please. And you have 3 minutes also.
Thank you. Nettlebridge is an isolated rural community with no pavements, no streetlights, no shops, no pubs, no mobile phone service, no TV reception, and contrary to the statement made in the planning application, no bus stops. Everyone residing here has to rely on their cars. The address on the planning application makes it look as if the property will be located in Oakhill, which does have all these features, but it's not. It's in Nettlebridge, over 2 miles away from Oakhill. We should not be encouraging the building of anything new that will lead to a further increase in the use of motor vehicles. The restrictions caused by the geography of the site means the proposed build itself can't be fully accessible. Car parking is proposed at the top of the hill. The holiday let itself, although on stilts, will be towards the bottom of the valley. It's a very steep-sided valley with guests having to stagger up and down the access track with all their belongings. A nightmare for families with young children. Elderly people could struggle with the distance and incline involved. And as for anyone with a disability, I imagine it would be a total non-starter. We shouldn't be encouraging the building of something new with limited appeal. In my original objection to the building of this holiday let, a simple internet search revealed that 2 of the big online travel agencies, Sykes Cottages and Booking.com, were promoting 122 holiday cottages in the immediate vicinity, whilst Airbnb were listing some 300 stays. The exact same search last Thursday revealed the same OTAs are now promoting 135 holiday lets, which is a modest increase, but Airbnb now list over 1,000 stays. We don't need any more. There are already 2 existing holiday lets within the valley, both located within the curtilages of the owner's properties, which means we're on hand to curtail any nighttime antisocial behaviour and can easily sort any daytime issues, giving peace of mind to our neighbours, several of whom work from home. But equally importantly, we're also on hand to assist our guests. We can recommend local pubs, craft galleries, market days, the best sites to visit, where they should park if they want to climb Glastonbury Tor. We've got a wealth of local knowledge that can be used to help support and promote other small local businesses. We fear this build would negatively affect the 2 existing holiday lets, both during and after the build process, which provide valuable income from 2 families in Nettlebridge at a time when we are already experiencing increased competition from other holiday lets, the opening up of overseas travel again, and the general downturn in people now able to actually afford a holiday. As a community, we've not been approached by the owner of the proposed holiday let to allay any of our fears. We gather that they're not local, so they won't be on hand to stamp out drunken singing on the veranda at midnight. Who will monitor the place in the inevitable quiet periods? Who do we turn to with issues? Who will their guests turn to with issues? If allowed to proceed, I fear this build will simply create more issues than opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our next speaker is Anne Lockett, please. And you also have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Nettlebridge is a small rural community with no immediate access to shops, pubs or other businesses that another holiday let would need to support if we are neither a thriving if we are neither a thriving business location or a robust local economy. We have only a small amount of pavement to walk partially on, and the nearest amenities are at Chilcompton, 3 miles away, Gurney Slade 4, or Shepton Mallet 4.5. It's not an easy walk to obtain groceries, etc. We have no public transport and a very busy road, with an abundance of heavy-duty traffic, aggregate lorries and other heavy goods vehicles, which are increasing all the time. I don't know who would want to cycle, let alone walk, on the A367. It's a fast and dangerous road. Visibility is poor, and a number of property maintenance people we've had working at Nettlebridge House have had near misses trying to pull out onto the road without being able to clearly see traffic, often lorries coming from either direction. I still can't find any information for sewer drainage on this small, steep plot. This is concerning, especially as Nettlebridge sits partially within potential flood zones and in a steep valley. Everything travels downhill, and there are many problems this can cause. And in fact, a neighbour's garden has had this in the past. The Japanese knotweed that's still rampant on the bank is right next to the A367. Disturbing the rhizomes, even in the mildest way, provokes it to grow. Flooding has also helped knotweed spread. Rivers and streams are notorious for spreading Japanese knotweed. Fragments of the rhizome are easily carried away further downstream to new sites, and in this case, straight down the Mel stream into Harwich Woods, let alone the possibility of neighbouring gardens. It says in the Mendip local plan strategies up to 2029, proposals should be formulated with an appreciation of the build and natural context locality. Nettlebridge is a small hamlet of houses. A new build on stilts has the potential to impact on the inherent natural beauty or character of Nettlebridge. Surely the aim is to protect the natural and historic environment. It looks sort of desperate to have a house built on stilts in the first place, to squeeze into a steep and unstable space to make money. The plan also states in the layout that there should be no issues with overlooking. Now the property has been moved further up the plot, and nearer the host property, there will be direct access to see into our kitchen in Nettlebridge House and upper bedrooms, and definitely our garden. And lastly, there's no mention of the amount of noise pollution from the A367 that any holiday tenants might endure, or the Nettlebridge residents from any unhelpful tenants that might be there. Thank you.
And thank you. Next one is Julie Connelly. I'm sorry if I've pronounced it incorrectly. You have 3 minutes as well, please.
Hi, it's Julie Cannella. My husband and I have been residents in Nettlebridge for 4 years, this March coming. We moved to the area to appreciate the wildlife, the open space, community spirit, and the hamlet characteristics Nettlebridge has to offer. As the owner of a sizable lake within the grounds, shortly after our arrival, we noticed a reduction of wildlife visiting the lake due to cloudiness and pollution coming from the adjacent river that inlets our lake. After multiple reported incidents to the Environmental Agency during COVID, no action was forthcoming at this point. It's only now, 3 years on, that we have a resurgence of wildlife within our lake: ducks, perch, geese, moorhens and mink. As stated in previous reports, the construction works proposed to erect this holiday at very close proximity to the stream poses a risk of contaminating the stream with rubble, dust, hazardous materials, which ultimately impact upon the lake within our property. In addition to the construction material entering the stream, there is a risk that the works would disturb the rhizome associated, as mentioned previously, with the Japanese weed knot, and also Himalayan balsam, which has been noted on the proposed site, which once disturbed may spread along the stream and enter our lake boundary and water banks, stifling growth of other wild plantation, which is coming along there nicely now. Surely we must protect the natural habitat around our waterways as a priority and put nature first rather than financial gain. It's for this reason I oppose and object that planning permission is granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I believe there's one more speaker here, Caroline. Yeah, Caroline. Right. You have 3 minutes as well.
We've lived in Nettlebridge for 40 years and own the field on the opposite side of the river to the proposed development. My concern is for the river, which rises from Embera Pond and rises again at Gurney Slade, so is close to source. It is clean normally, apart from history of pollution from the quarry at Gurney Slade, but that has been dealt with, I think. So normally unpolluted and fast flowing with a stony bed. This is the ideal habitat for dippers, which are protected and classified in the UK as amber under the Birds of Conservation Concern 5, the Red List for Birds 2021. They have nested under the adjacent bridge below the A367 for as long as we can remember. The British Trust for Ornithology have visited to ring the fledglings. Dippers feed on aquatic life, which is plentiful in the unpolluted waterway. They are easily disturbed. The river also supports otters, which are designated and protected as European Protected Species, EPS, protected under the Conservation of Habitats and Species Regulations 2017. Otters are also easily disturbed. A report from the Environment Agency states that the fast flow of this river and the stony bed support a trout hatchery, and brown trout are present, as well as other small fish and aquatic life on which otters feed. After 2018, when the previous application was passed, the plot remained undisturbed and a large number of alder trees established and grew to a good height rapidly. I point this out as the trees were felled later when the whole site was raised to the ground again. Alders are nitrogen fixers and are valuable, especially in damp environments. The planned holiday let will overlook Nettlebridge House. It differs from the 2018 approval because the raised structure had to be moved back up the bank from the river due to concerns over flooding of the packaged treatment plant. The plans clearly show the holiday let would now be above the high wall of Nettlebridge House, providing a good view directly into the garden, bedrooms and kitchen. Human activity associated with occupation of any type of dwelling so close to the watercourse will create disturbance to this fragile environment. The site is completely unsuitable for development and should be left as a haven for wildlife, as it has been for generations. I don't see any economic benefits to this.
And thank you very much. And Caroline, and next we have Simon Spence, who I believe is the applicant. Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. As alluded to, there was a previous application that lapsed during COVID restrictions. I purchased the land about 3 months before the end of the lapsing, rather than rush in and create a disturbance and start the process. I felt it was better to reapply. This was nearly 2 years ago now, and we only get to this point now. We've applied further ecological studies. We've addressed topological issues by remapping and creating the property well away from the flood zones. The stilt arrangement is to minimise disturbance of the land. The property is screened from the road. It's screened from the properties adjacent up the hill. There is a lot of screening of trees remaining intact that will screen to the property that the previous speakers alluded to the northwest. And the property, every consideration for the impact has been taken into account. One thing I'd like to say is that somebody spoke about the design is totally not in keeping, but the development of the public house has had additional areas added to it that are metal and modern in design, similar to any modern dwelling like we're proposing, with timber cladding which will blend into the surroundings. That's all I'd like to say, and hope you will consider this application, in that there's nothing changed, rather improved from the original application that was passed. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Cheers. Okay, so we're going to move on now. So we have both of the Somerset councillors here for that area. Which one of you would like to go first, please? Okay, Edric, you go first.
Tony's looking at me. That's what I did all his canvassing for him around there. I'd like to thank all the speakers for speaking so passionately. I do know Nettlebridge quite well. I canvassed there. I always used to be the window cleaner for the pub, so I'm well aware of the area from when it was a pub. Just like to point out, for those who may not have been there, Nettlebridge is, as they say, a very small hamlet. It's not in Oakham, it's actually in Stratton Parish, and it is well outside the limits of either of those villages. Despite me trying to make some efforts, I've yet to get a bus stop there, so it's not in a sustainable location. As somebody else says, I can vouch, it is a horrible road to cycle on. Having ridden to parish council meetings in Stratton-on-the-Foss, it's a horrendously busy road. I agree with everybody. I think it's a quiet and historic hamlet, and I don't think it warrants this type of development. The exits, even though it used to be a pub, the exits onto that road are extremely busy. It carries fast-moving traffic. And recently we'll have had even more traffic, although temporarily, when the road through Shore Compton was shut. I just don't think this is a sustainable, I'll say that in English with my teeth in, I just don't think this is a sustainable location, this type of development, and it really doesn't fit in the houses there, and I'm in agreement. I don't think this is NIMBYism. If anybody wanted to say that about people speaking passionately about the hamlet they live in, I don't think a development of this style fits into the environment in which it's proposed, and I'm happy to go with the officer's recommendation and would like to propose along the lines of that, please.
Thank you, Edric. Tony, you'll be next.
Thank you, Chair. I've actually got that working first time. Yes, thank you, Chair. I know Nettlebridge a little bit, as we went there a bit canvassing, and I used to go years ago to the pub that's on the Nettlebridge Inn, I think it was called. I agree entirely with what my colleague has said. I've read all the written objections. I've listened to the impassioned pleas this afternoon, and I agree totally with the officer's recommendation for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Benty, yes, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say that since Councillor Hobbs proposed that we went with the officer's recommendation so soon in the debate, then I will just say that I'm quite happy to second.
Thank you, Benty. And next is Helen.
Yeah, thank you. I'm also impressed with all the details that I've heard this afternoon from all the passionate speakers. And for that reason, at the moment, it's being refused on the grounds of it lying in the countryside outside defined development. This is on page 74, where development strictly controlled and the site's distance and poor accessibility and connectivity to local services. So it's kind of based on sustainability. Can we add to that? Because we do sometimes have situations where people appeal, don't we? So can we add to that some other reasons for refusal, which is a potential overlooking? I understand what the applicant has said about the fact that there's trees there at the moment, but they could be chopped down. So we've got potential overlooking as a third reason for refusal. A fourth reason for refusal is effect on woodland ecology and the spread of Japanese woodland and Himalayan balsam. So I think that it could be a fourth reason for refusal. A fifth reason for refusal could be the effect on watercourses and its ecology. We've had mention of trout, dippers and otters. So I wanted to add extra reasons for refusal, if possible, so that we've got a very solid base for refusing this.
Thank you, Martin. You'd like to come in on that one?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the substantive motion is as per the officer recommendation, which is the reason for refusal in your report pack. The committee can add further reasons for refusal. However, what I would say is that each and every reason for refusal that we put forward has to be capable of standing on its own two legs if the applicant goes to appeal. So we need to have evidence and good arguments to back up those reasons if that occurs. So the matters that you've raised, Councillor Kay, as additional reasons for refusal, two things. One, that would need to be an amendment put forward to the substantive motion, and you'd need to seek a seconder for that. And also whether the officers want to comment on those additional reasons, Chair, before we go further.
Thank you, Martin. Simon, I believe you wish to come in.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Kay, again, we've heard as well as to the views of local residents, and they were very passionate about their thoughts about how the application should be refused. Again, you'll see in the report pack there was and you heard from the last speaker that there was an application approved by this authority relatively recently. And I think if you look at the report pack, we've tried to crystallise for you what's different between this application and the framework that you've got to assess it against compared to the earlier approved application, which has led to us recommending refusal for those reasons outlined in reason for refusal 1. Again, it's driven because of the NPPF and your own policy frameworks objective to deliver sustainable development, and where the site is outside of a development boundary, i.e. in a remote location, as in this one, we're recommending that the unsustainability of the site location does not outweigh the impacts of the site being in a rural location. I think the specific points you raise and have been raised, obviously we haven't got any technical support from our statutory consultees to add those in for reasons for refusal. So my advice would be, you've obviously got an officer recommendation which has been proposed and seconded, and that should be what you should vote on. Obviously, if that's not succeeded and there's sufficient view from members that you want to add those reasons, you'll then have that opportunity.
All right, thank you, Simon. And I think Alistair wishes to come in now. Sorry, hang on a minute, Alistair. We'll let Helen come back.
I just wanted to comment on what Simon, the officer, says, which is that I just an observation really, but I just think it's a shame that our ecology officers could not have had a more in-depth look at this. I see what you're saying. We've got to have, and what Martin Evans has said about, we have to have legs. It has to be able to stand on legs. So the consultees have to be in agreement with the refusal reasons. And I'm just saying it's a shame that the ecology department didn't object on those grounds. But I withdraw my suggestion for the amendments on after hearing what you've both said.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Martin, you wish to come back in?
Yes, just to follow up on that, Chair. I mean, if the application is refused by committee today and it does go to appeal, then if members of the public or objectors wish to raise other issues with the inspector, they are perfectly entitled to do so, and the inspector will consider them. They would not form part of the council's case, but the inspector would still hear those objections and make a judgment on them.
Sorry, can I say one more thing? Sorry.
Thank you, Martin. You may.
It's one line, which is again the word sustainability being used arbitrarily. Rather, it's being used in terms of location a lot, but in terms of ecology, it could also be applied. And this is not sustainable in terms of ecology.
All right, thank you for your opinions. Alistair is first, Susie, and then I'll come back to you.
Thank you, Chair. As before, I'm not actually from this area, so all the three things I have to go by is what's on my screen from the case officer, which, by the way, I think is first class, the paperwork around this case on the laptop, and thirdly, more importantly, is local knowledge. I looked at everything. I'm happy with everything and the recommendation, by the way. The four speakers we had under local knowledge, very detailed, very vast, and very passionate. And I have to rely on that, and I have no reason to believe these people are telling fibs. I'm quite sure everything's absolutely upfront. So saying all of that, I'm absolutely against this wholeheartedly, and I think even if it went to appeal, I do actually believe, in my own experience, that this would fail an appeal. But that's not my problem. But I agree with the case officer like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alistair. Susie, you'd like to come in?
I just think we need to be cautious because unless I've misheard, the applicant purchased this property with planning permission, which has lapsed, or for whatever reason, this is a new application. So the chance of him appealing, I would say, is quite high. So I think we need to make sure we've got our ducks in a row if we're going to follow the offer's recommendation to refuse. Thank you.
Thank you, Susie, for that. I think we're not really supposed to take into consideration the fact that they may go to appeal, but it's fine. It's a logical thing to say, and but it is the rules are that we don't think about that. Okay, thank you. So we've had both of the. We've had both of the ward councillors, or I should say division councillors. We've had comments. Do we have any more comments from anyone? Barry.
I think it's a great shame that this house is the wrong house in the wrong place, because it does demonstrate with the floods that we've had over the last week, this is the way to build. Put your house up on stilts and you won't have any problems. All the way around, we've got people coming in saying, my house has been flooded, what can I do about it? Well, this is somebody who's prepared to look after himself and do something about it at the build stage. Nevertheless, it does say the proposed development lies in the countryside outside defined development limits. And just like the last case, when I proposed it, or I suggested, you can't vote for something that is definitely against planning policy, then I think we should vote against this as well. And I know the area very well because some of my formative years were spent in the Nettlebridge Inn. So I do know it's a pretty little hamlet. That's all you can say about it, and it doesn't need to be spoiled by what is, in my view, a boxy development just for the sake of putting something somewhere. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Barry. Does anybody else wish to say anything before we go to a vote? No? No, okay, Banty, thank you. Okay, then we will go into Edric, your proposal was?
My proposal, seconded by Councillor Height, is to go along with officer recommendation refusal.
Thank you. All those in favour of that recommendation?
It's unanimous, Chair.
So that's a unanimous refusal. Sorry. Okay, thank you. I think we can squeeze in the next one before we have a comfort break because it's only 3:30. So we'll have a comfort break at after this next one, which is, if I'm right in thinking, Sourdough Farm, because the land at Burcott House Farm has been withdrawn. So we're going to move on to what will be Sourdough Farm application for outline planning permission with all matters reserved for a replacement dwelling. And Jennifer, this is yours.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Okay, so this is an application at Sourdown Farm, Butley, and the proposal is for outline planning permission with all matters reserved for a replacement dwelling. Okay, so the red line shows the development limits of Butley itself, with the yellow circle being the application site. As you can see, it's outside the development limits, but it is fairly close. Okay, and this is closer aerial views of the existing dwelling. So the permission on the site at the moment is for a temporary dwelling. Because it's not permanent, it's not a legitimate fallback position, which is why this has come to board today as a departure. But like I say, there is an existing dwelling on site, along with other development, as you can see. And the location plan, the blue line shows the land and the ownership of the applicants, and the red lines are the access coming off of Sub Road, going up to the application site itself. The red line along the northwest boundary is proposed planting that they're going to to put in to help screen the property from the footpath, which runs close to the blue line itself. Okay, a closer up view of the site plan. Again, this is outline of what matters reserved, so this is only indicative in terms of the actual appearance of the dwelling at the moment. It's more the access and the principle itself that's being considered. As you can see, it shows the northwest planting, also shows the access from Sub Road, and the grey building to the north of the access is a agricultural building. Okay, this image just shows the footpath. So the purple lines are the public footpaths. You can see there is one that runs past the western boundary of the sites, which they're proposing to screen with the planting. Because it does fall in the phosphates area, they're going to provide off-site phosphate mitigation through the upgrading of a septic tank off-site. So this image is actually the off-site mitigation, so it's not the application site itself. This will have to be secured via Section 106 if the application were to be approved. So yeah, sorry, I should say the septic tank is going to be upgraded to a package treatment plant, along with a package treatment plant being installed on the site itself. So these are photos of the application site. The existing dwelling is the timber dwelling on the left-hand side there, with the actual proposed dwelling is going to be slightly off to the front of that dwelling. So this is the existing dwelling on site. This will be removed once the new dwelling has been constructed, and we've conditioned that on the outline as well. It is the yard area as you drive into the site of the agricultural building. So there's plenty of space for parking, turning. This is the existing footpath which runs down the western boundary of the site. The planting will be off to the left of that fence line. The existing access to the site onto Sub Road has got fairly good visibility. And the view from Sub Road back onto the site, as you can see, the proposed dwelling will be quite far back within the site itself, so it will be fairly visible when viewed from the main road. And the application is recommended for approval as per the officer report. Thank you, Chair.
And thank you very much. Now, if I'm right, we don't have either of the division councillors here today. Now, Susie, I'm going to come to you first, because I don't think we've got anybody to speak, or nobody is down to speak at all in the public domain, which surprises me. Yeah, it should have been 24 hours in advance, I'm afraid. So, Susie, you know the area as well as me. Would you like to say a few words?
I mean, my concern is that they're not really giving us much detail about what they want to do.
Well, they answered what information we asked.
So they're asking for everything to be reserved, aren't they? And so I feel like it's quite difficult to take a view in those situations. And it often to me feels like a way of getting your foot in the door. And then later we sit around this table having discussions where we all have to accept that we can't change it because the permission's already been given. So I'm finding it difficult to support this much as I might like to. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Susie. I'll come in now then, because I'm the next closest person, I think, to the area, and I do know it.
Come back on Susie.
Simon, if you want to come back, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Again, you are correct, Councillor Hart. It is an outline application, all matters reserved. But again, they would have to submit an application for reserved matters approval, which again is caught by the scheme of delegation. So if you yourselves, or if the divisional members and the parish council weren't happy with those details, it would be subject to the scheme of delegation. Again, just to point out, on page 95 of the report pack, it is proposed as a dwelling which would be 1.5 stories in height. So again, if you're concerned about country house 4, 5, 6 stories, I think this permission would avoid having that potential scenario.
All right, thank you for that, Simon, and for clarifying for Susie. As I said, as I'm probably the next closest person for the division. Now I know this farm, and I know this area really, really well. And I have no problems with approval. I can't see any reason why we should not grant permission for this one. It ticks a lot of boxes in my mind. I can see that Susie had some other ones that, but it ticks a lot of boxes, and it is a small business that is coming on and doing well, and I see no reason to stand in the way. I think we should go, and it does say something that neither of the division members have had to put in a complaint. They've had no complaints, and I believe Butley Council haven't said Parish Council have not put in anything, did they?
They actually supported it. I think they actually supported the application.
They were supportive. Yeah, that's what I thought. It wasn't an objection. So I think that we should support the officer in this one and the applicant. But we'll cast it open now to the other members, please. Helen.
Thank you, Chair. It does look as if it's close to the village, and therefore although it's outside the settlement limit. I appreciate it's outside the settlement limit. It looks as if it's walking distance to a lot of facilities, and it says that there's a temporary dwelling there. But this cannot be used as a fallback position. Although it says that in the report, I think we kind of are using it as a fallback position, really, because we're kind of saying, well, let's make the temporary dwelling into a permanent dwelling. The only thing that I thought wasn't, I actually looked at the planning portal and I looked at the resources and sustainability statement, and it says that it's going to be, in terms of its life cycle analysis and its sustainability in terms of the materials that it's using, it's going to be BRE Green Guide Specification D. Now that's like an A to E rating that like you get for energy efficiency of fridges and things. So it's actually not going to be very sustainable. And I would love it if we could put a condition on to make it a bit more sustainable. I don't know how we can do that. I don't know if it's possible to do it, but that was just my main doubt about it, really. It just doesn't look as if it's going to be fit for the future.
Simon, would you like to come back on that one?
We could include the sustainability and resource statement condition. So that would require the applicant to set out the sustainability credentials when they make their reserve matters application. So that would spell out when they make the submission what they're proposing.
Thanks, Simon. Are you happy, Helen? Great, thank you. Martin D. I'm going to call you Martin D because so we don't confuse you.
I was just going to suggest there are so many conditions here. It seems a very thorough report and heard nothing against it that I propose we move to approval.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you, Edric, for seconding. Okay. Are there any more questions before we go to a vote?
Can I clarify if that is an approval with that extra condition, Martin?
Yeah, I assumed that had been accepted.
Yeah, all fine. Okay, let's go for a vote. All those in favour?
Unanimous.
Unanimous. Thank you, everybody. That was, you'll have your permission. And now we will take a 10-minute break for a comfort break and try to be back here by 5 to 4. Okay? Okay, then we'll start again now. We'll go on to number 10, which is, just got to sort that out. Okay. Number 10 is the application for the land north of Woolbridge Gardens in Frome, and it's the erection of a dwelling house is up for refusal, and it's Kirsty who's doing it. Okay, Kirsty, would you like to carry on?
Thank you and good afternoon. This is agenda item 9. It concerns the planning application involving land north of Wallbridge Gardens and Froome. The proposal seeks permission to construct a 2-bedroom detached dwelling house. This aerial photograph shows the application site to occupy the lower area of the land of a narrow wedge-shaped site squeezed between a rank of garages to the south and a modern flat development to the north. Here's the location plan, again showing the application site and illustrating its context within a residential area of Froome, with Victorian terraces along Garstan Road and 1980s development, which comprises Wallbridge Gardens. The application site occupies the former garden space of the recently approved 4-bedroom detached dwelling currently under construction under planning reference 2022/1723/full. This block plan shows the proposed property to be located to the southeast of the approved dwelling, and it will occupy the majority of the northern half of the application site. There is no proposed driveway or space within the narrow site to turn vehicles around. Parking is proposed for 2 cars through the use of an existing garage and the creation of an off-street parking space to the lower end of the site. The proposed site plan shows the elements of the proposal in greater detail, as well as its proximity to adjacent residential neighbours and the site dimensions. The pedestrian access is along the southern boundary, shared by an existing rank of garages here and here. These are the elevations and plans of the proposed dwelling. It's a 2-bedroom detached property. Site photographs. This is the photo of the proposed site looking northwards. To the left is the approved 4-bedroom detached property recently approved. In the foreground, you've got the rank of existing garages, and in the background, you've got the existing flat development. The proposed house will be located in this area here. This is a photograph taken within the site. You can see that you've got in close proximity the flat development, and on the right-hand side, you've got the rear elevations of the existing garages. This photograph was taken from Great Western Street, which is further to the east, looking west towards the application site. You can see the recently approved 4-bed house under construction, and this will be the area in which the proposed development will be located here. As per my report pack, it is recommended that the planning application be refused on the following grounds. Firstly, the proposed development would result in the removal of the majority of outside amenity space that would be enjoyed by the future occupiers of the already approved development to the northwest. Also, that given the limits and constraints of the site, the proposal would result in a poor outlook for future occupiers with minimal garden space. Secondly, the proposed dwelling, by virtue of its scale and massing and the site's location, represents overdevelopment, and it would not satisfactorily relate to the local context. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kirsty. We're going to go on to the public-y thing now, but Mr. Whitney has informed me that he'd like to withdraw and he won't be making any comments this afternoon. So we then move on to we have Councillor Helen Kay. Now you're going to do 3 minutes for it, and then you're going to move from there. Okay. Well, the agent is afterwards down here. You're down here as being after.
Okay, ready to go? I haven't timed this, so. All right. Okay, thank you.
Well, we will doing you for 3 minutes, Helen. So you've got to get it right.
I'm bound to go over. All right,
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Go. All right. Although the land has been described as wasteland left over from the 1980s development of Wallbridge Gardens, it had been colonised by trees and shrubs, which had provided some relief to the urban form of the unrelenting brick and tarmac in this area. As the officer has described, there's a house already under construction at the moment on the triangular site, which already got permission. When that permission was given, I said that it shouldn't affect the residential amenity of those already living there, and that I wasn't clear about the access road for this because it goes alongside the last terrace in Garston Road, which could possibly be over someone else's land, or it could be their access road to their parking space. It goes to the mews at the back and their side gates. I asked for clarification. I also asked for a landscaping plan to accompany the application to soften the development. No landscape plan had been submitted at that time, but then it was forthcoming when the officer wrote the report. It showed a garden to the east of the 4-bedroom house, and it even said in the application there would be trees, a mix of silver birch, rowan, fruit trees, and they would be brought in at semi-mature height. And for that reason, and it also said the garden would stretch out to the east with a courtyard, that the long views that this new property would look over this garden. And for that reason, I made no objection, and I oops, I've gone over it went through. Now, this new application, this is basically going to be in about 75% of the original garden of that house that's been approved. My calculation, not unlike the agent who says they're 19 metres apart, if you look at the map again, can we put the map up again, you can see the length of a car is 2 to 3 metres. You can see that they're about a length of a car and a bit apart from each other. They're actually only about 4 or 5 metres apart, these two buildings. They'll be very close together, and neither of them will have much garden. So my first reason to object is the overdevelopment and the brutalising effect of this overdense urban environment. Secondly, the amenity of future occupiers. I don't know if you've got that, Kirsty, about how small it is, but also it's going to be very difficult to maintain it because the walls are going to be right up against the garages, etc. But lastly, access roads and road safety. What they're proposing here is Wallbridge Gardens is effectively 2 sets of terraces with a gap in the middle, and I don't know if they've got permission to go over that land. It actually says private, and I don't know who owns that land, but it means that they're going to have to use that land, which is currently used. Some of those people haven't got gardens. They're actually flats, not terraces, and the children play in the front there. And yesterday when I was visiting, a lot of construction traffic was coming out between those 2 sets of terraces and going very fast. And I'm concerned about the extra traffic going in and out over there. And I'm not sure that we've really established where the who owns that access. And I'd also like to add an extra reason for refusal, which is on the grounds of us not being clear about the access arrangements. It's unfortunate that we never resolved the access arrangements for the first property that got permission, but I think it's being highlighted again for this second property. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Yeah. That was the quickest I've ever heard you speak, I believe. If you'd like to go and take a place in the public with the public for the duration. Okay, and next I'll ask Mr. Mark Reynolds if he would like to come to the speak, please. And you have 3 minutes as well, Mr. Reynolds. Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members of the board. I'm Mark Reynolds, a Chartered Town Planner, and I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant, Mr. Kelly, a local builder. The proposal before you seeks to develop an otherwise redundant and historically poorly maintained unkempt parcel of land, which was space left over from the 1980s Wallbridge Gardens development. The principle of development is acceptable by virtue of the site's highly sustainable location within the development limit for Froome. As you've heard, directly to the west, there's permission for a house which is being currently constructed at present, which also sits behind a row of garages. The officer recommendation for refusal is tabled on 2 grounds, which I would respectfully argue are subjective judgments, which as a board you could safely reach an alternative judgment on. The first ground is that inadequate garden would be retained for the neighbouring dwelling or provided for the new dwelling. The neighbouring dwelling under construction would, however, retain a good-sized courtyard garden. It would be developed at a density of only 16 dwellings per hectare. The proposed dwelling itself, subject of today's discussion, would itself have 120 square metres of garden space, which at its longest would be 20 metres in length. The garden is significantly larger than those of the Wallbridge garden properties directly to the south, whilst the Great Western Street apartments directly to the north have no communal gardens. The officer report argues the new dwelling would have a poor outlook. The dwelling would, however, have large triple bay windows facing southeast at ground and first floor levels to the main habitable rooms, and large windows facing northwest and southeast as well. Each room would have a good sized window to allow good daylighting and outlook from the property. The second reason for refusal argues overdevelopment of the site. Taken in isolation, the proposed build would be developed at 43 dwellings per hectare. This is consistent with Mendip local plan target of at least 30 to 40 dwellings per hectare being achieved in the towns. This density is also lower than that of the adjacent Wallbridge Gardens properties and the Great Western Street apartments. The dwelling would be no taller than that permitted directly to its west and is surrounded by a mixture of 2- and 3-storey properties. In this context, it would not, in my professional view, represent overdevelopment. There are no objections to the appearance of the proposed building, which would complement the neighbouring build to the west. There are no highway safety objections to the proposal. The applicant owns all of the access. The dwelling would incorporate solar panels, an air source heat pump, a heat recovery system, and be firmly efficient to make it a highly sustainable build. There are no technical objections to the proposal from any statutory consultee. Froome Town Council raised no objections, and none of the neighbours have written in to object to the development. All parties accept the presumption in favour of sustainable development applies here, and the benefits of delivering a much needed 2-bed dwelling for rent on a historically redundant piece of land in a highly sustainable location would not be clearly and demonstrably outweighed by any harm. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Now, I would normally go to the division councillors, but Helen has already spoken because she has declared an interest. She is or predetermined, so she's now moved to the public sector. I don't believe Shane is online, is he today? No, we hadn't heard from Shane. Okay, that's fine. So then I will throw it open to the board. Who's going to be the first one to speak? Edric.
Thank you, Chair. The first thing I notice is parking, which seems very limited. Garage parking plus 1 space. So do I assume there's 1 space and a garage with no space in front of it to park? So I assume the parking is within a garage. These days, I don't see stuff put in garages apart from exercise bikes, canoes, garden rubbish, anything else. So I'm a bit worried about the lack of parking amenity there, and the fact there's no ability to turn a car around. So presumably, exiting it isn't going to be the safest, the easiest thing out. Can I have some comment on that, please?
Yeah. Thank you. Would you like to come in, Simon? Yeah.
I think it'd be helpful if Kirsty just shows the location plan, so again, members, you can understand more clearly what you're considering. Steam powered on this occasion, yeah, we've reverted. I think it's now coming on. Just want to go to the site location plan, Kirsty. That's right. So the plan there obviously shows the red line identifying as the application site, and Kirsty's highlighting the extent of it. You can see where there's the garage that's identified as part of the red line. Perhaps if you go back, Kirsty, to that there's the single garage next to pedestrian access there. So that's proposed. And then there's a single bay car parking area there. What you've heard from Councillor Kay are the access arrangements. So Kirsty, if you just want to take members to the access that the applicant owns with your cursor. Do you want to perhaps go back, because that probably be helpful to show on that large plan. So again, you can see the throughway between 1-2 Garston Road and then 1-2 Woolbridge Garden. So that's owned by the applicant, and obviously what the land between the backs of Woolbridge Gardens and the garages is the land that Councillor Kay was identifying as not knowing who owns it, but clearly the occupiers, if consent was granted, they would have access to get to the red line area that you can see on the application site there. I mean, again, from the officer recommendation, you'll see that we're recommending it for refusal, and in a way, the over-intensive development reason that we're proposing you should consider, whilst it doesn't explicitly include that provision, you know, that is something that you know, has contributed towards us leading to that conclusion. But I think, members, you have to consider that the application is proposed with 2 parking spaces which could be accessed. To what extent you think that's an overall acceptable level of provision within the context of development, you're entitled to consider.
Can I come back, please, Chair?
Yeah, thank you, Simon. And Edric, yeah, I'd like to come back.
So just to clarify, so there is, you can turn on the space in front owned by the applicant. There is space there to turn vehicles round. So outside the actual boundary of this development, in other land owned. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for confirming that. Cheers. Right, who would wish to speak next? I don't see anybody wishing to make a comment. No comments. Okay, so we need to have a proposal then, please, from Martin L.
Right, Martin L. I propose that we go along with officer's recommendation and refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Do we have a seconder for Martin? We have the other Martin. We have Martin D is seconding. Okay, we can now go to a vote. All those in favour of going along with officer recommendation? Seven. All those against?
1.
Okay, it's carried. I don't think there was any abstention. Oh, there's an abstention. Sorry, Susie, didn't mean to leave you out. Thank you. Okay, so that one has gone with the officer recommendation. Thank you. Helen, if you'd like to retake your place, please. We have one, we have a bit more business left to do yet. Okay, thank you. So next we're going to move on to the Bridge Farm West Lane to Milford Lane, Elhampton. I know what this is. Yeah, should do. Shepton Mallet, and that's Mendip South Division again. Well, that'll be the third one from there today. Existing agricultural barns on site to be demolished and replaced with 4 dwelling houses. It's up for approval. And Lorna, it's yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. That saves me repeating that slide. So yeah, we just to be clear on this site there, so there is were considering the demolition of the barns. There is quite significant history on this site that there are 2 prior approvals for conversion of the barns under the Class Q, and that was followed by an application for the conversion of the barns. So there are fallback positions on this application. Previous applications were all for conversion. So here we're looking at demolition, so starting again. So here is the site. There's the barns that are shown there. It's tucked at the back of the site, so not fully visible from the lane as such. And then this is what is proposed. No, sorry, that's just a closer in view of the site. And then the proposal we are looking at is sort of the clearance of the site and then the erection of 4 detached dwellings. So just to give you some context of what the barns look like on the site at the moment. They are in various state-like condition. They were granted Class Q, so they were considered capable of conversion. And then that would be what the context of the site would look like if the dwellings were approved. So we've got the 4 units, so very slightly in design. So obviously this is all online, but just to give you a quick context of, and they've got carports or garages with each unit. So that unit 1, the dwelling, and again, there's the carport. Unit 2, just a slight variation in the design with its carport, and they've got sort of a open port with the storeroom on the end of them. Unit 3, slight variations in the port. Some of them have got 1-level roof, some of them have got multi-level, and then unit 4. So that one's, yeah, obviously a slightly different design and layout to that one. So that just gives you a bit of an idea of the context of the site for those that haven't been able to go. The entrance in the bottom right-hand corner there. So this is what the buildings look like at the moment. So these were taken this morning. I nearly got frostbite, but I made it. So I apologise for the lack of photos. It was freezing. So these buildings would go. And then just to give you some context of the access, so literally again, so turn to the right, completely clear view. The proposal to the left, it goes round and narrow, so I will show you. So the photo on the right-hand side, as if you're pulling out of the site and look left, it narrows and goes over the bridge. So just showing that whilst the visibility is less, the vehicles will be approaching slower because it is narrow and single traffic at that point. And then the photo on the left is actually from the road existing access to the site. So as I say, it's here because it is a departure, but the officer recommendation is for approval.
Thank you, Lorna. Again, unfortunately, Claire or Alex were unable to be with us today. So again, me and Susie are probably the closest.
Speaker.
Oh, do we have somebody? Oh, we do. Sorry. My fault entirely. You have your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm here because I'm the applicant for this scheme. As you've seen from Lorna's report, the only grounds really on which this application could be put up for refusal and not approved is it's outside of development limits and therefore considered to be open countryside. In case you don't know Alhampton, it's a sub-village of Ditchett, which is a secondary village for development in the Part 2 plan. Ditchett's probably one of the least qualified villages in the plan, and Alhampton actually isn't much dissimilar. So it's probably a village that didn't quite make it. But as Councillor Sully would tell you if she was here, that Alhampton's an especially vibrant village at the moment, following the amazing success of the recently opened community pub at the Alhampton Inn. More houses in the village will add to the vibrancy, I believe, of the village. I think that the plan with the development tucked neatly adjacent to the built-up form of the village on a former farm and not so really out in any open countryside is a logical and sensible expansion of a village that hasn't actually had a new development for over 30 years. The lack of relevant objections reflects the community support that I've had in this whole process. An objection from a neighbour who felt overlooked was dealt with by me through a new landscaping scheme, which is now part of the application, even though it wasn't felt that that was really relevant to the planning process. The neighbour was kind enough to withdraw the application. My family have been in the village for generations. I live and I work there and I intend to stay. So I've tried very hard to make sure that the plans in this application is completely in keeping with the style and vernacular of a very pretty village and is as energy efficient and green as we can reasonably make it. I intend to lead the build of the project myself, and I want to start as soon as is reasonably practical and take advantage of the declining workload that certain local builders have got at the moment. I therefore hope that you'll be able to approve it and I can get started. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I would just like to tell you that Councillor Sully was unwell today. That's the reason she's not here. She was unwell this morning. Okay, thank you. So, as I said before, myself and Susie are the closest, I believe. So, Susie, would you like to have anything to say?
Thank you. Yeah, I know the area well, and I would say this looks like a scheme that's been really well thought out. It looks like a nice development, and I would see absolutely no reason why we wouldn't allow them to go ahead with it, personally.
Thank you, Susie. And pardon? Alistair, yeah, I'm gonna go first because I'm closer. So yeah, I'm going to agree with Susie, and I think this is a really good plan, and hopefully we can support the officer and the applicant. Thank you. Now, Alistair, you'd like to come in.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I don't have too much to say about this really, but I agree with the other councillors there. Yes, I'm in favour of it. Seemingly, I've gone through some of the bits and pieces here. It's passed the sequential test, it's passed the exception test, highway standard advice as far as I can see. It very importantly complies with policy D25, which states particular consideration will be given to the extent that the proposal could result in unacceptable impacts, including consideration, loss of privacy, overlooking, visual dominance, loss of light, noise disturbance, odour, fumes. I can go on and on here, but it's okay with all of that. There's no problem I can see at all. So on the back of all that and the presentation of what the other councillors have said, I propose we grant permission. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll come back to you.
Going to second, that's all.
You're going to second?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now I've got Helen next.
People waffle on far more than I do. Well, okay. I have some. It's a very nice development. It looks very nice, but just I think something that looks very nice isn't necessarily enough for me. So they're all detached houses. So it's great that they've got high energy standards, but they're all detached. If they were semi-detached, they'd be better in terms of energy efficiency. But originally, it looks like in 2022, several applications were put in, and you've got what is called it's under Q. We've never had any training on this, but I've picked it up along the way. That you can have your barns checked to make sure that they're structurally sound, and then you put in an application to convert a redundant barn into properties. And I believe that first of all it was going to be 2 properties, and then it became 4, presumably 2 semis. Well, I don't know because we haven't got the details. But anyway, so it seems to me that just that for information, I have worked in waste management many years ago, and something like 60% of all the waste that goes goes to landfill is from construction waste, right? That is from knocking down buildings and taking them by road, heavy lorries taking them to the landfill site, and then so though we're saying that this is going to be lovely and sustainable and all the rest of it, we are knocking down some barns that were already there that were deemed to be capable of being converted. So again, we just need to be a bit careful about how we use the word sustainable. The second thing is that there were some objections. I did look online, and there was somebody who was talking in quite some technical detail about the flood risk. This is quite close to the river, and this person, I assume is a man, was saying that he maintains a lot of the overflow culverts, that sort of thing, and there's all kinds of plastic things, that little valves that open and close. He maintains them all, and he said if he didn't maintain them all, there'd be a lot of flooding, and there is flooding apparently on this junction, because we're quite close to the river and the bridge, as we've seen from the pictures. So I'm just a bit concerned about the flood risk as well. So I'm not as enamoured with it as everybody else seems to be, so I still have some reservations, and I can't find what the other thing was. As somebody else has mentioned an objection about, yeah, it is. I think I've gone over 3 minutes. Someone else mentioned an objection also about road safety, that people whiz round the bend very quickly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. Edric, you're next.
Thank you. We quite often get presentations put before us about how sustainable things are, and as a cyclist and a walker, as soon as using the train, I can't think of a more sustainable location. I just did a quick Google. It says it's 7 minutes to the train station, a 27-minute walk. What could be more sustainable? I'd love to live here. I'm very happy to go with the approval.
Right, thank you, Martin.
Do we have any officers would any officers like to answer Councillor Kay's comment about flooding? Sorry, Lorna, it was yours, wasn't it?
Bear with me, I'm just going back to my report. Having been there this morning, I drove through a large puddle at the completely opposite end of the village. Bear in mind the weather that we've had, the flooding that Shepton has suffered on Thursday. I drove into the site and there's absolutely no surface water. I drove up the lane the other side, which is where the river sort of approaches the site. Yes, there is an individual that maintains that. But the Environment Agency have raised no objection. The actual site is, let me get this, I'm going is in flood zone 1, so that isn't high risk. It's the entrance point, hence why it's all gone through the relevant tests. So the development site isn't a flood risk. It's a small section in the entrance, and it wasn't viewed to be a substantial reason for refusal. Yes, there are lots of individual arrangements in sort of quirks of all sorts of settlements. So yes, this person does maintain a culvert at the moment. Like I said, they gave us some really helpful, comprehensive details of the flooding in the past, but that flood management is in place to prevent the flooding, and it works, as with evidence this week from the adverse weather that its area suffered.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Lorna. Yep.
Only an observation here. Okay, just an observation. Somebody just said it was flood zone 1. Page, I'm not quite sure what page we're on here.
Apologies, it's flood zone 2. I've just double checked my report.
Yeah, you're right. That's what I was just going to come to. It's flood zone 2. So I don't really have to go into detail because we know the difference between 1 and 2 anyway. As I said, highways standing advice, ecology standing advice. Everything else is as you see it. So I stick by what I said, and I recommend the proposal. Thank you. I don't recommend that. I propose to grant permission.
Right, thank you. Barry, you'd like to say something?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it does tick all the boxes and it gets rid of these horrible looking barns. But just going back to the point that Lorna made, this individual maintains the valves on the culvert system. Is this a paid job or does he do it voluntarily? And what happens when he's dead?
I believe the actual gate, culvert, the element of flood management is within his property. The river runs through the end of his garden, I believe. So it's within the interest of whoever is occupying that property to maintain that flood management system, because actually their property would be the one that would be most adversely affected if that wasn't managed.
Thank you, Barry. Any more questions before we go to the vote? No? Okay. So all those in favour of going with the officer recommendation?
9.
All those against? Any abstentions? Abstention. Right, thank you, Helen, for your abstention. Cheers. Right, we now move on to appeals. And I think, Simon, are you going to take this?
Excuse me, Councillor Height wishes to say something.
Oh, sorry, yes, Benty, carry on.
No, Mr. Chairman, I just want to ask a question. We all get the letters in an email with all the outcome of. So if I may be excused, then I would, because I do read them when they come in. So I cannot see. I really need to go home. That is basically. So I'm very sorry, but I will have to go home.
That's absolutely fine, Benty. You carry on and go home now if you wish. That's okay. I don't think Simon will take too long. He's going to go through the through the appeals.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, there's 3 appeal decisions that we are just confirming. And again, Councillor Height is right. You do all receive copies of the appeal decisions. And again, this is just an additional agenda item that I think has been transferred over from the new scheme of delegation for the new authority. So again, we're just complying with that. I suspect some of you may have read the appeal decisions at Moores Barn and possibly completed a review of the decision. So again, without going into any great depth, Chair, it's a site that you all possibly may know. The former Mendip District Council considered a number of planning applications at the site, and whilst as a council we were supportive of accommodation to be provided for the Gypsy and Traveller community at the site, there was ongoing issues around non-compliance with the terms of the plan permission that the former council had issued. There was an application to regularise the top part of the site for effectively use as a builder's yard, which was occupied by the occupiers of the Gypsy and Traveller accommodation. You might remember that as a district council, Mendip refused planning permission for that, and it went to appeal, and the inspector who considered the appeal against the planning application refusal agreed with the council and refused planning permission at appeal. As a result of what had gone on at the site without the benefit of planning permission, the council pretty much didn't have much of a choice but to serve an enforcement notice to try and regularise the unauthorised activities at the site, which the council did. The landowner appealed against those notices, and as you can see from the 2 decisions, was successful. At the inquiry, the council did concede the point that the council was supportive of Gypsy and Traveller accommodation being provided at the site, but it needed to be done in a regulated fashion, which wasn't the case. So again, in terms of the outcome of a PLA, again, we were supportive of that as officers, because now we've at least got a planning permission that we can check the site is being used in compliance with. In terms of the use of the site for commercial activity, again, the inspector felt that with the opportunity to provide some landscaping on the northern boundary, which would further shield the activity, he was happy to support that. At the appeal, we obviously defended the council's reason for refusal. Again, we were slightly perplexed by the inspector's decision on that. But if you are going to allow residential accommodation, and the site next door provided an opportunity for those residents to have some space to carry out their commercial activity. So hopefully we've now got a planning permission which regulates the way in which that site is used in the future, which we can check and enforce against. Whereas before that, we had a position of just unregulated development, and the owner, although they did apply retrospectively, they tended to do what they wanted and then apply and deal with the outcome as it was. So we've now got some control, I think, Chair.
Thank you for that, Simon. Everybody happy? Anybody got questions? I can see their hands are up. Barry, you were first.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Are there any cost implications with this, Simon?
Councillor Clark, no, the applicant didn't apply for costs, so we don't have any.
Helen, you have a question as well?
Yeah, I was on the Mendip District Council Planning Committee when we refused this application for change. I think it was changed. There were two different things: change of use, and then there was a day room that was put up that was absolutely massive. It was like nearly the size of this room, and now I see that in this appeal that the inspector has suggested there's been new plans put in, has suggested that the height of that is going to be lowered because it's very prominent. There's the railway line going past, and it's on a corner where you can see it. How do we then make sure that that ceiling, the roof height is lowered, and how do we make sure that the landscaping is done? Because it's a very ugly site as well.
Yeah. Series of conditions, Councillor Kate, which I think, let me just check to see if they are in the report pack, which seek to control the delivery of those aspects. So there are some conditions that provide a time frame to ensure that. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't see them.
Effectively, conditions will be the way in which we ensure those changes are delivered. Hopefully, the applicant will comply with those conditions. If they don't, again, it will be an enforcement task.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Helen, you're happy, obviously. Any more questions from anyone before I close the meeting? No. Okay, then we'll close the meeting. Oh, Helen, you're just in there. Go on then.
I have requested, we're quite often in these reports, we have stuff about HRAs, shadow HRAs, which is a new one on me. I've asked before for us to have some training on that, and also what's it called, substantial harm, lesser substantial harm, all those terms that some of us I know have been on planning committee before, but I think it's a bit much to ask us to pick these things up as we go along. The sequential test for flooding, who else knows what that means? I had to look it up the first time I came across it, and it's not very easy to read it off the internet and the government website. I would love to have some training on some of these more some of these acronyms and these things that we're expected to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. I think we'll take that on board. And Edric, you need something to say?
Just quickly, Chair, there are some other appeals to go through before we close the meeting.
Apologies. There's one appeal against a listed building refusal, and you can see that the inspector disagreed with the council's decision to refuse and felt that the harm wasn't so substantial that it wasn't outweighed by the public benefits. It's probably nothing for us to look at with regards to that one. I think you might be keen to discuss, or at least just touch on, the outcomes of the other appeal for the campsite at Heybridge. So again, hopefully, members, you've read that. If you haven't, it's an existing campsite that has got various planning permissions that govern the way in which it's occupied. The one thing that is similar to both is that the site is not allowed to be occupied as someone's permanent dwelling. The site is basically split with part of it laid out with permanent units. So there are permanent units there. I think there are about 12, but they're not allowed to be occupied, or they weren't allowed to be occupied as someone's permanent dwelling. And then the rest of the site, the larger part of the site, is just laid to pitches where people can turn up and camp, obviously for holiday purposes. The appeals or the planning applications that were refused sought the same thing for both areas, that effectively that they should not be restricted to holiday use. And we weren't surprised with the outcome, to be honest, because the inspector concluded that the part of the site that's got the permanent units, he didn't see any reason why those units should not be occupied on a permanent basis. Whereas for the larger part of the site, he did agree with the council that to effectively convert the plots to a position where permanent units would be sited and occupied on a permanent basis would be harmful. So he allowed the smaller part of the site to be occupied on a permanent basis, and the larger part of the site, again, to be restricted for use as holiday camping and caravanning pitches only. So I suspect it will be interesting to see what the landowner does with those two permissions, and we may see an application for another form of development in the near future. I don't know.
All right, thank you, Simon. Edric, you happy with that?
Yeah.
Right, okay, that's brilliant. Before I close the meeting, Barry, you've got something to say?
There's no cost involved. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I would like to ask our interloper, our person from outside of our area, Alistair, whether you've enjoyed your session this afternoon.
Microphone on. Absolutely first class. I've actually been in this room before for Shepton Mallet Town Council. Sorry, not for the Town Council, but for a meeting, so I knew where to come anyway. But yeah, very informative. I'm more than happy to be with officers I don't know and never met before, or yourself, the chairman. So yeah, more than happy, and I'll take actually some of this information back to North, which is a week today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm glad you enjoyed your day, your afternoon. So that is it. I don't think we have any more business this evening. We can go home early, which is good. So we'll see you all again in a month's time, or most of you.